This alien connected to the Anunnaki pyramids revealed a truth about Jesus humanity was never meant to know, and the moment he said it, the Great Pyramid itself began to glow, as if something buried beneath Giza had been waiting for that secret to be spoken aloud. The air turned electric. The sand trembled. And for the first time in 2,000 years, an ancient resonance awakened that no scripture ever recorded. What this being showed me rewrites everything we think we know about creation, consciousness, and the purpose of humanity itself. Before we dive into this revelation, like, share, and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now take a breath, because what happened next is where the real story begins. The desert night holds a kind of silence that feels older than civilization itself, a stillness shaped by winds that have carried the stories of empires now buried beneath grains of sand. At the base of the Great Pyramid, Coby stands surrounded by that ancient quiet, unaware that he is moments away from witnessing something no human in recorded memory has ever seen. What begins as a subtle tremor beneath his boots becomes a deep and resonant vibration, as if the entire plateau is waking from a long sleep. The ground shivers, sending thin rivulets of sand sliding down the weathered limestone blocks. Then the impossible happens. From the apex of the Great Pyramid, a column of golden light erupts with a force that seems to tear the night sky open. It is not a beam in the way light behaves under any natural law. It bends the air around it. It hums in frequencies that settle in the bones more than the ears. The atmosphere ripples outward in shimmering waves, like heat refracting off the desert floor, but charged with energy that feels intelligent. This is not illumination, this is activation. Coby's surroundings seem to fold into silence as the light intensifies. The sky becomes a canvas for something ancient, something deliberate. Within the vibrating glow, patterns emerge, shifting and weaving like the geometric signatures found in the oldest Anunnaki carvings. Scientists once called these patterns mythology. In this moment, they become undeniable. The air thickens. Time seems to hesitate. And then Coby hears it. A voice, not spoken but placed gently inside his awareness, calls his name with unmistakable clarity. There is no accent, no tone, no breath. The sound is pure intention woven into consciousness. It carries a weight that bypasses logic and touches something deeper. The voice reveals a truth hidden far beneath layers of human religion and historical interpretation. A truth about Jesus, not as he is remembered, but as he was known to those who shaped the earliest human civilizations. The revelation is so profound, so incompatible with the narratives Coby has understood all his life, that for a moment his vision narrows and the desert seems to tilt. The beam flares brighter, and the ground groans beneath him, as though the earth itself recognizes the return of a forgotten signal. Every instinct in his body urges him to step back, but awe overrides fear. The Great Pyramid, a monument believed by many to be dormant stone, pulses like a living organism awakened after thousands of years. Its surface glows in delicate veins of gold, tracing patterns that match the strange frequencies vibrating through the air. In that staggering moment, Coby understands that he is witnessing something humanity was never prepared to face, a convergence of history, myth, and cosmic memory unfolding in real time. And just as the light reaches its brightest peak, the scene dissolves, drawing him backward through the events that led him to the pyramid on this night. Hours earlier, none of this existed in his imagination. Hours earlier, he believed he was simply another researcher cataloging relics in the desert. Hours earlier, the sky had not yet torn open. But everything changed the moment the pyramid awakened. In the remote stillness of the western desert, Coby worked beneath a sky vast enough to make a person feel like a temporary visitor. The excavation site stretched out in muted tones of sand and stone, illuminated only by the soft glow of headlamps and the last traces of twilight sinking behind the dunes. It was a place where history slept in layers, where each grain of sand had once touched an empire now vanished. Coby had always felt that the desert held a memory of its own, a watchful presence that studied those who dared to peel back its secrets. On this night, the air was cool and deceptively calm. The team had retired to their tents, leaving Coby with the quiet he preferred when cataloging pottery shards and mapping out newly uncovered foundation lines. His flashlight swept gently across the excavation trench, catching textures and patterns that hinted at structures older than the dynasties recorded in Egyptian scrolls. The desert was generous to those who listened. And Coby listened well. Then, without warning, the world above him changed. A silent flash tore across the sky, stretching from horizon to horizon in a single fluid sweep. It produced no sound, no shockwave, no trace of thunder. Yet its brilliance was so absolute, it bleached the desert in a blinding sheet of gold. For several long seconds, it felt as if daylight had returned. The dunes glowed with a warm metallic shimmer, and every stone and artifact cast elongated shadows that danced across the sand. This was not lightning. Lightning flickered, cracked, and fractured. This was different. This was a seamless stroke of illumination, smooth and controlled, as though drawn by a hand beyond atmospheric rules. It was the same hue of gold that Coby would later see erupt from the apex of the Great Pyramid, the same frequency of light that would shake the foundation of everything he believed. When the brightness faded, the desert plunged back into darkness with almost unnatural abruptness. The stars blinked overhead, calm and unchanged, as if the sky itself was pretending nothing had happened. But the silence that followed was heavier than before. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, as though the natural world was waiting for something Coby could not yet understand. A pale afterglow lingered in the air, stretching thin threads of luminosity toward the ground like drifting remnants of a celestial tear. Coby stood motionless, feeling the echo of the flash settling into his skin. His instincts, sharpened by years of archaeological work, told him that events like this did not happen without consequence. Nature did not move in straight lines of golden electricity. Ancient structures did not respond to skyborne signals unless the source was deliberate. He scanned the horizon and noticed a faint disturbance in the dunes, several kilometers away, a soft plume of dust rising slowly into the night. The flash had not been an atmospheric event. Something had descended, something large enough to displace sand but silent enough to defy explanation. Coby's heart quickened, not in fear, but in recognition. He could not explain why he felt it, but some ancient part of him seemed to know that the desert had just been touched by something older than civilization itself. A presence had arrived, and its arrival carried the same golden frequency that would later awaken the Great Pyramid. In that moment, the night began its slow transformation into a story far bigger than archaeology. The sky had torn open, and humanity's oldest monuments were already listening. The desert night stretched wide and untouched as Coby followed the distant plume of disturbed sand. Each step carried him further from the familiarity of the excavation site and deeper into a terrain shaped by millennia of rising and falling dunes. The air remained unnaturally still, as though the environment itself was waiting for him to reach whatever had fallen from the sky. In the faint moonlight, the tracks ahead glimmered with a subtle sheen, marked not by wheels or footprints, but by a narrow trench carved cleanly into the earth. It continued in a perfect straight line, impossible for any natural impact. The ground had not been scorched or shattered. It had been parted. Coby moved cautiously toward the end of the trench, guided by a faint glow that pulsed with rhythmic consistency. The illumination was different from any lantern or device carried by the team. It rose from the sand itself, casting a warm gold that mirrored the silent flash he had witnessed earlier. As he approached, the source of the light slowly came into focus. A shape emerged from the dune, elongated and still, half submerged in the earth as if the desert had attempted to swallow it upon arrival. The figure lay on its side, tall and slender, its limbs sculpted with a precision that defied ordinary anatomy. The skin emitted a muted luminescence, soft yet steady, glowing in a color identical to the ancient resonance markings carved into Sumerian and Egyptian artifacts. In the shifting moonlight, the figure appeared carved from living metal, with faint lines of energy tracing patterns beneath its surface. Coby felt an immediate recognition that transcended logic. The markings resembled symbols found deep within temples, inscriptions scholars had long argued were ceremonial. Yet here they were, alive and moving beneath the texture of skin. Sand clung to the figure's form, but the glow gently repelled each grain, creating a thin halo of suspended dust around its body. The desert floor beneath it had compressed into a smooth basin, the result of an arrival that had not relied on impact. The figure had not crashed. It had descended with intention. Coby observed the being closely, sensing an age that could not be measured in centuries. Nothing about it suggested threat. Instead, it radiated an unfamiliar calm, an energy that seemed to hum in harmony with the land itself. In that moment, Coby understood that this encounter was not an accident. The desert had revealed something older than the pyramids, and it had chosen him to witness it. It begins as the desert settles into an ancient stillness that feels almost deliberate. Coby stands near the luminous figure, sensing a shift in the air as particles shimmer gently around it. The being's surface glows like mineral strata catching buried starlight, revealing subtle patterns shaped by unimaginable time. A faint tremor moves through the sand as the figure exhales energy rather than breath, reorganizing the surrounding silence. Its eyes open with measured precision, revealing depths layered like geological epochs, compressed into a single living vantage. Those eyes hold a calm intelligence, suggesting memory older than river valleys, mountain ranges, or the earliest human cultures. Coby senses an awareness forming between them, an invisible bridge shaped by intention rather than language or physical gesture. The being studies him with steady focus, its gaze carrying weight like distant cosmic cycles, quietly turning in the dark. A soft radiance flickers within its eyes, creating the impression of stars reflected across liquid horizons untouched by earthly time. Without movement of lips or muscle, a wave of recognition flows outward, settling into Coby's awareness with stunning clarity. The transmission feels natural, as though communication has always occurred on frequencies humanity simply forgot how to perceive. His name emerges gently inside the silence, woven through light rather than sound, carrying intention older than written stories. The desert around them responds subtly, as if the environment acknowledges a reunion scripted long before human civilization formed. Sand trembles lightly along the dune's edge, creating ripples that mirror ancient carvings found within forgotten temples and sealed chambers. The being lifts its gaze toward the horizon, revealing subtle glints of internal energy cascading beneath translucent layers of skin. Each flicker resembles living script, echoing motifs carved into monoliths that once marked humanity's earliest attempts to understand the sky. Coby feels the desert expand around him, as though unseen boundaries shift to accommodate the presence now observing him closely. The creature's attention remains steady, carrying patience that hints at experience drawn from civilizations long crumbled into dust. Its awareness drifts across the landscape, touching each contour with familiarity, suggesting the desert is an old acquaintance. Light pulses through its body once more, creating a resonance that vibrates softly across the sand, like distant ocean tides returning. The connection between them strengthens quietly, forming an unspoken recognition that this meeting was shaped by forces beyond chance. The night acknowledges encounter. This unfolds as the desert night deepens into a vast expanse of quiet. Yet the silence carries an unfamiliar tension. Coby remains rooted in place, as a subtle shift ripples through the air around the luminous figure. The being's presence seems to expand without movement, generating a faint oscillation that vibrates across the sand. A pulse of light travels outward, not bright enough to illuminate the landscape, but strong enough to alter the texture of the atmosphere itself. The desert's natural stillness begins to feel layered, as if multiple unseen horizons overlap for a brief moment in time. The first vision arrives without warning, emerging not through sight, but through a field of perception opening inside Coby's awareness. A colossal pyramid appears, not as it stands today, but as it once existed in pristine form. Smooth limestone casing blocks reflect a golden sky, and the structure hums with internal resonance. From its apex, threads of energy stretch into the atmosphere, weaving patterns that resemble constellations long forgotten. The image feels active, vibrant, alive, as if the pyramid is breathing. The scene dissolves and reforms into towering ziggurats, rising from an ancient landscape pulsing with ritualistic motion. Their stepped platforms shimmer with symbols etched in luminous script. These markings carry the same geometric precision found within the being's glowing skin. The structures thrumming with energy suggest an interconnected grid linking distant civilizations through principles deeper than architecture. Each layer feels purposeful, arranged according to celestial alignments rather than human preference. Another shift reveals carvings buried beneath the desert floor, hidden far below modern excavation reach. The sand peels away within the vision, exposing chambers adorned with forbidden inscriptions stretching across polished stone. Their lines flow like rivers of encoded instruction, forming sequences scholars have only glimpsed in fragmentary relics. These carvings depict figures descending from radiant pathways, interacting with early humans in rituals resembling the transmission of knowledge rather than worship. Their purpose feels instructional, protective, and urgent. Yet beneath each image lies an unmistakable tension. The structures tremble faintly, the inscriptions flicker, and the ground beneath them fractures along invisible fault lines. These are not passive memories offered for curiosity. They pulse with warning, suggesting that something long silenced is beginning to stir again. As the final vision fades, the desert around Coby settles back into darkness. But the weight of what he has witnessed remains, pressing gently against the night like an ancient truth resurfacing after millennia of quiet restraint. The desert holding a hush that feels older than the structures buried beneath it. The visions linger in Coby's mind like afterimages burned into the fabric of memory, and the luminous presence beside him radiates a quiet patience, as though guiding him toward the next revelation. A gentle resonance gathers in the air, and once again the landscape around him dissolves into a shifting tapestry of imagery shaped not by imagination but by something precise and intentional. The sand seems to drift upward and then fall away, revealing stone surfaces long hidden beneath geological time. The new vision settles into clarity with the unmistakable shape of an ancient chamber carved from a single massive slab of rock. Its walls glow with the muted warmth of mineral deposits, illuminated by a golden internal light. The environment appears untouched by erosion, suggesting a time before shifting sands reclaimed it. Coby's attention is drawn to the far wall, where an elongated cartouche stretches vertically across polished stone. The carving is intricate, framed by symbols associated with early dynastic periods, yet its craftsmanship appears far more advanced than the surrounding artwork. The interior of the cartouche reveals a figure rendered with striking detail. The silhouette stands upright, draped in flowing garments that mirror styles found in old temple reliefs. But the face commands immediate attention. It bears features unmistakably human. But what arrests Coby is the familiarity. The eyes, the structure of the nose, the calm poise carried within the carved expression. The figure is identical to historical depictions of Jesus, down to the serene gaze associated with countless artistic renderings created millennia later. Yet the carving before him predates Christianity by thousands of years, existing in a context utterly incompatible with established timelines. The surrounding symbols add further complexity. They depict celestial bodies arranged in patterns not aligned with known ancient star maps. Energy lines extend from the figure's hands, connecting to geometric constructs resembling the core patterns seen in earlier visions. These shapes radiate outward as if illustrating influence, transformation, or instruction. The message embedded in the design suggests a role far older than any religious narrative records. It portrays the figure not as a prophet or teacher, emerging within a single cultural era, but as a presence recognized across epochs and civilizations. As the vision stabilizes, the cartouche pulses faintly, causing the chamber to flicker like a memory struggling to remain intact. The warning becomes clear. This is a fragment of knowledge deliberately concealed, a record of a figure whose identity spans far deeper into human history than any sacred text acknowledges. The desert returns to stillness, leaving the weight of this ancient contradiction pressing firmly against the night. Beneath a desert sky that feels wider than moments earlier, as if the horizon itself has stepped back to make room for the significance of the revelation emerging in the silence. The luminous figure beside Coby emits a steady radiance that gently reshapes the atmosphere around them. Subtle vibrations ripple through the sand, creating shifting patterns reminiscent of ancient geometric motifs engraved into early Sumerian stonework. Each pulse carries an almost biological rhythm, as though the being embodies the memory of civilizations once guided by unseen hands. The night air thickens with a low harmonic resonance, not loud but unmistakably intentional, and the desert responds in faint tremors, acknowledging a presence that predates every monument standing upon its surface. Images begin to rise within Coby's awareness, not as visions imposed against his will, but as quiet revelations unfolding through the same frequencies that shaped previous transmissions. He senses the weight of an identity linked not to any single era, but to a lineage woven through the origins of human consciousness. The figure's glow intensifies, casting threads of gold that dance across the sand in deliberate motions. These threads trace symbols known from ancient cylinder seals: the winged disc, the tree of life, the twin guardians standing on either side of a central axis. Each image carries layers of meaning scholars have debated for centuries. Here, beneath the open sky, their purpose begins to feel less mythical and more instructional, as though humanity encountered these symbols while glimpsing fragments of a far older system of knowledge. A realization settles with quiet precision. The being is not merely a traveler, nor an observer, but a preserver, bound to the responsibility of maintaining continuity between epochs of human development. The term surfaces in Coby's mind with clarity shaped by telepathic transmission. Preservers are custodians connected to the Anunnaki, not as rulers or deities, but as stewards tasked with guiding early human consciousness through its formative stages. Their influence shaped the first leaps of intelligence, the sudden appearance of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and symbolic language. They intervened not to dominate but to cultivate capacity. The sand around the being responds again, forming concentric rings that mirror patterns carved into ancient stones found in Mesopotamian ruins. These rings feel alive, echoing the role of the preservers across ages. Humanity evolved, civilizations rose, but only a few of these custodians remained, holding remnants of knowledge meant to resurface when the species reached a new threshold. As the resonance fades, the desert returns to stillness. The night holds the weight of a truth hidden across millennia, illuminated by a single surviving guardian of an ancient lineage. It settles into motion as the desert night stretches in a vast sweep of silence, the kind that carries the weight of unspoken histories. Coby stands beside the luminous being, and the atmosphere around them begins to shift again with quiet precision. What follows does not arrive as speech or command, but as a steady infusion of understanding, unfolding with the clarity of a documentary lens sweeping across the ancient plateau. The Great Pyramid rises in Coby's mind as if viewed from above, its geometry suddenly vivid with purpose that transcends architectural brilliance. The structure appears not as a relic of a vanished dynasty, but as an engineered instrument designed with astonishing accuracy. Its stones align with cardinal directions to a degree modern tools struggle to replicate. Its chambers form a network of resonant cavities, each calibrated to respond to a narrow band of frequencies. In the revelation forming within Coby's awareness, the pyramid's internal passages glow with faint light, showing how energy once moved through them like blood through arteries. The monument begins to resemble a living node rather than a static tomb. The transmission deepens, revealing the pyramid's original condition. Its casing stones gleam in sunlight like a polished mirror, turning the entire structure into a reflector capable of gathering not only light but subtle cosmic signals. The capstone flashes with metallic brilliance, acting as a receiver attuned to distant broadcasts far beyond the range of terrestrial detection. Coby sees channels of energy descending into the pyramid's core, distributing signals through chambers carved with perfect mathematical intention. These images carry an unexpected vitality. The structure does not appear ancient or dormant. It hums with the faint pulse of a machine that never fully shut down. Beneath layers of erosion and missing stone, something remains active, quietly sustaining a connection established before written history. The desert wind sweeps across the vision with the same reverence as tide over coral, tracing contours shaped by hands that understood natural laws far deeper than modern science comprehends. The Great Pyramid, in this unfolding truth, is a beacon waiting for the return of a specific signal. The frequency is neither sound nor light alone, but a complex harmony of cosmic vibrations once broadcast by the preserver's technology. It is a call and an answer, a circuit incomplete for millennia. As the transmission softens, Coby senses that the desert itself has been listening all along, holding its breath for the moment when the missing frequency returns and the ancient node awakens once more. The desert night folds inward as a deeper layer of reality begins to rise around Coby, revealing a truth that has slept far beneath every recorded civilization. What surfaces in his awareness does not emerge as a picture or a scene, but as a slow unveiling of something vast, ancient, and deliberately hidden. The ground beneath the world's oldest cities seems to fall away, exposing a chamber buried farther down than any drill or satellite scan has ever reached. It stretches across no familiar dimensions, existing in a depth closer to memory than to geology. The chamber appears carved into a single piece of stone older than continents. Its surface is smooth with a precision suggesting instruments beyond any human craft. Faint light glows from within the walls themselves, not from torches or fire, but from minerals infused with energy that seems to breathe. The illumination moves like a pulse, echoing rhythms that hint at intelligence embedded directly into the architecture. The chamber feels alive, as though it observes rather than simply contains. Along its floor are rows of monolithic tablets, each etched with flowing script that resembles patterns seen in early Sumerian cylinders, Egyptian funerary art, and the earliest Indus seals. But these inscriptions are not the work of ancient cultures. Instead, ancient cultures copied them, imperfectly echoing fragments of knowledge passed down from an origin long concealed beneath layers of myth. The symbols on the tablets shift with a fluidity impossible for stone, rearranging themselves as though adjusting to the presence of human consciousness. Coby senses that this chamber does not belong to one region or era. It lies beneath all of them, anchored deeper than the foundations of pyramids, ziggurats, and forgotten temples. It is the seedbed of civilization itself. In its inscriptions lie records of how early humans were shaped, guided, and elevated from wandering tribes into societies capable of agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and metallurgy. None of it appears as accidental discovery. Every advance seems placed deliberately, timed precisely, offered with intention. A faint hum reverberates through the chamber, expanding outward like a whispered memory of the preserver's work. The chamber does not simply store history, it shapes it. It watches epochs rise and fall, waiting for the moment its knowledge must be revealed again. As the vision fades, Coby feels the weight of an engineered past pressing against the present, signaling that something long hidden is stirring back into motion. A low vibration settles into the desert air as a new layer of understanding rises through Coby's awareness, carrying the weight of something both ancient and unfinished. The vision that unfolds does not arrive with spectacle, but with the quiet certainty of truth returning to the surface after being buried for thousands of years. What appears first is not a figure, but a timeline stretching outward like a living tapestry, each thread representing epochs of human struggle, growth, and imbalance. The strands glow faintly, revealing moments when civilizations rose in harmony and moments when they fractured beneath their own weight. Through these oscillations runs a single pattern: humanity drifting steadily away from the natural alignment it once possessed. As the ancient timeline expands, the hum intensifies. Early humans appear scattered across continents, forming societies but drifting out of sync with the deeper resonance that once guided their evolution. Wars ignite. Empires rise through conquest rather than wisdom. Knowledge becomes fractured, hoarded, and altered. Across this unfolding history, the energy of the preservers recedes, not in abandonment but in observation, waiting for a threshold that must be crossed before intervention becomes necessary again. That threshold arrives as a period of deep spiritual fracture, when humanity begins to seek meaning not through internal connection but through external authority. The harmony that once linked consciousness to the natural world weakens to its thinnest thread. It is within this imbalance that a shift occurs in the vision, revealing a gathering of luminous figures standing at the edge of a dimension unbound by earthly geography. Their forms resonate with the same golden frequency as the being before Coby, yet taller, brighter, and carrying an authority that vibrates through the vision like an ancient chord. At the center of this gathering stands a singular presence, radiant beyond comparison. Its frequency so balanced that it appears both familiar and unreachable. This being does not speak. It simply is, embodying alignment in its purest form. The other preservers observe it with reverence, marking a moment that signifies intervention shaped not by force, but by recalibration. This being is chosen to enter the human timeline, not as a ruler or conqueror, but as a balance bringer, a restorer of resonance. The vision shifts again, placing the figure within the early human world. Its presence softens the chaos of surrounding societies, not through command but through frequency. Infants calm, storms still, hearts shift subtly toward compassion. The being walks among them, carrying a light that humans interpret through their own limited languages. Some call it miracle, some call it blasphemy, some call it awakening. In the final moments of the vision, the being's form settles into a human identity recognized across centuries. Coby sees the familiar profile, the gentle expression, the radiance concealed within flesh. The world would come to know him by a name carried through countless tongues and cultures: Jesus. But here, in the raw truth beneath all interpretations, he appears not as a founder of religion, but as a cosmic emissary sent at a time when humanity teetered on the edge of losing itself. The vision fades slowly, leaving the desert steeped in an ancient stillness and the mystery of a mission far older than Scripture. Coby, dissolving into a quiet that feels almost deliberate, as if the land itself is preparing to reveal a truth concealed beneath millennia of belief. The air thickens with a subtle resonance that rises not from sound but from memory, the kind that does not belong to a single lifetime. What comes next emerges slowly, unfolding like a forgotten layer of history resurfacing through sediment and shadow. The timeline before him stretches far beyond Scripture, deep into ages when early humans walked the earth, guided by instincts that were not entirely their own. A new vision takes shape with the precision of a scientific reconstruction. Humanity appears in waves of development, tribes forming settlements, settlements becoming cities, and cities rising into kingdoms fueled by discovery and conflict. Through each progression, A thread of imbalance becomes increasingly visible. It is not a defect of biology or intellect. It is a fracture, subtle but persistent, woven directly into the fabric of human consciousness. This fracture alters perception, distorts connection, and magnifies fear. It is the quiet cause of humanity's tendency toward division, mistrust, and violence. It is not born of nature. It is the residue of ancient intervention. The vision pulls closer, revealing the moment this fracture began. Early humans, once guided by an innate resonance linking them to the natural world, encounter beings from the preserver lineage. The intent behind their arrival is to uplift a developing species, to accelerate growth and intelligence. But in doing so, a thread of consciousness is stretched too quickly, reshaped too sharply, leaving behind a gap between instinct and awareness. This gap widens across generations, becoming the fracture that influences every human society to come. Across time, the fracture manifests as spiritual confusion. Humans seek meaning, but cannot perceive the deeper connection their ancestors once felt. They create rituals, myths, and gods in an attempt to articulate an absence they cannot name. Civilizations emerge, each trying to rebuild the resonance that was lost. Yet, the imbalance persists. Empires rise through conquest. Religions form around fragments of truth, but splinter into divisions that mirror the internal fracture itself. The vision shifts again, revealing the preservers observing these developments from a vantage unbound by physical space. Their concern grows as humanity approaches a tipping point. War becomes a defining motif. Greed overshadows wisdom. Compassion weakens beneath the weight of survival. The fracture deepens to the brink of becoming permanent, risking the collapse of the higher consciousness humanity was meant to develop. At this critical juncture, the preservers choose intervention not through force, but through alignment. A being is chosen whose frequency resonates in perfect harmony, capable of entering the human experience without amplifying the fracture. This being carries within him the original resonance humanity lost, a blueprint of consciousness unbroken and fully integrated. When he steps into the human world, his presence alone begins to rearrange the imbalance around him. The vision follows this being into human form, revealing a life lived not to create ideology, but to restore internal coherence. Every act, every teaching, every moment of compassion becomes a recalibrating frequency designed to remind humanity of a connection older than civilization. His miracles are not performances, but demonstrations of a consciousness functioning as it was originally intended. His words are simple, because truth does not require complexity. His message points inward, urging humans to rediscover the resonance they once carried without effort. But the fracture resists healing. Human fear distorts his teachings. Authority structures reshape his message. Followers elevate the messenger while forgetting the method. The being's work becomes fragmented across cultures, misinterpreted, institutionalized, and transformed into doctrine rather than practice. What was meant to awaken becomes a foundation for new divisions. The mission remains incomplete. The vision softens into the quiet desert once more, leaving Coby suspended between revelation and uncertainty. Jesus, as known through history, appears not as a founder of religion, but as a recalibration, a restoration attempt, a messenger of alignment whose mission was never meant to become a system of worship. The desert holds its breath around him, as if waiting for this realization to fully settle. The fracture remains in humanity still, echoing through centuries of conflict and misunderstanding, yet the blueprint of alignment endures. The mission was not lost. It was merely delayed, awaiting the moment the world becomes ready to understand what truly occurred. Coby stands within this unfolding truth, sensing that the resonance the balance bringer carried may be returning, not through the past but through a new convergence, rising quietly within the present. The desert, drawing tighter around Coby, as if the landscape itself understands the gravity of the revelation forming in the stillness. The air grows dense with an ancient resonance, the same quiet hum felt beneath temples long reclaimed by the earth. What comes next is not a vision imposed but a gradual unveiling, as though layers of human history begin to peel back and reveal patterns overlooked for thousands of years. The fracture within the human mind takes shape not as a metaphor, but as a tangible disruption woven into the architecture of consciousness. The first image emerges softly. Early humans move across the landscape in cooperative rhythm, guided by instinctive connection to their surroundings. Their communication is simple yet unified, shaped by a subtle internal harmony that modern humans no longer remember. The connection is not mystical. It is biological, intuitive, a natural resonance binding individuals into a collective understanding. But that connection fractures slowly when outside influence accelerates development too quickly. The preservers, attempting to uplift an emerging species, introduce knowledge meant to elevate consciousness. Yet the infusion disrupts the balance between instinct and intellect. A gap forms. A fracture. The fracture deepens across generations, creating distance where unity once existed. Humans begin to experience themselves as separate from others, separate from nature, separate even from their own inner guidance. This disconnection births the first seeds of fear, a sensation that grows stronger as the fracture widens. Fear becomes a lens through which reality is interpreted. It shapes behavior. It shapes choices. It shapes entire civilizations. The vision expands into ancient cities, flourishing with innovation, while also battling undercurrents of distrust and rivalry. The fracture influences the rise of hierarchies, the pursuit of power, and the emergence of dominance as a survival strategy. This flaw becomes the silent architect behind countless conflicts. Tribes who once shared resources now divide out of suspicion. Kingdoms who once built through cooperation now expand through conquest. Violence erupts not from necessity, but from the illusion of separation. The fracture creates a world where humans seek meaning externally, crafting rituals, myths, and belief systems to fill the void left by the lost resonance. These systems attempt to reconnect humanity, yet most amplify the very fear they try to solve. The timeline shifts toward the period when Jesus appears within the world. The arrival of the balance bringer reveals a presence aligned with the original unity humanity once possessed. The vision shows him moving through villages where tension hangs heavy in the air, and yet the atmosphere around him becomes subtly reordered. Children respond with curiosity instead of fear. Elders feel peace before understanding why. The being's presence acts like a tuning fork, restoring coherence not through instruction but through frequency. His teachings emphasize the return to internal connection, the kingdom within, the unity of all life, the dissolution of borders drawn by the fractured mind. His message points humans back toward resonance, toward aligning with what they had forgotten but never lost. Yet the fracture resists healing. Fear distorts his words into rules. Division reshapes his teachings into doctrine. The unity he demonstrates becomes repackaged into systems that divide people by belief rather than reconnect them through understanding. His message becomes a structure instead of a state of being. The vision transitions back into the desert night. The fracture remains visible now, not as a concept but as a shadow imprinted on the unfolding of human history. It lingers in conflicts, in misunderstandings, in the persistent habit of seeing the world through separation rather than unity. Yet within this shadow lies the blueprint of restoration, carried by the balance bringer, and waiting for the moment when humanity becomes ready to perceive it without distortion. Coby senses the desert leaning closer, the silence holding the weight of an unfinished mission. The fracture in the human mind is not permanent, it is simply unhealed. And the presence beside him carries the next step in the restoration that began 2,000 years earlier. A process quietly stirring again beneath the noise of the modern world. The desert around Coby deepens into an ancient silence as a new vision gathers at the edge of his awareness. It arrives slowly, like a tide pulling back to reveal a shoreline hidden for centuries. The air grows heavy, charged with the same golden frequency that has guided every revelation so far. What unfolds next carries the weight of a secret protected across generations, a truth erased from history long before any scribe carved the first gospel into clay or parchment. The missing years of Jesus, the long quiet stretch between youth and ministry, rise into focus not as myth, but as deliberate concealment. The vision begins with a landscape far from the familiar scenes of Galilee and Judea. Mountains rise like ancient guardians, and a narrow path winds between them into a region untouched by empire or trade. In this solitude, a young man travels alone, his presence calm yet unsettled, drawn forward by something he does not yet understand. He is no icon, no figure haloed in future reverence, but a seeker following an inner pull toward a place humanity was never meant to find without guidance. The desert shifts around him, not in supernatural spectacle but in a subtle alignment, as though the land recognizes a resonance finally returning to its rightful path. The scene shifts again, revealing a concealed entrance embedded into a cliff face, indistinguishable from its surroundings to any ordinary traveler. The stone responds to the young man's approach, vibrating with faint recognition. The passage opens not through mechanisms, but through frequency. Inside, the walls glow with the same mineral luminescence seen in the deeper chamber earlier. Here, sound behaves differently. Movement echoes without noise. Space bends in gentle arcs, guiding him downward as if the structure itself is alive and welcoming. At the base of the descent lies the hidden chamber, the one Coby glimpsed in earlier visions. But now it is occupied. Luminous figures stand in quiet formation, their radiance soft, their attention focused on the young visitor. These are not gods or rulers. They are instructors, preservers, who carry the memory of human potential before the fracture altered consciousness. Their presence does not overwhelm. Instead, it aligns the space, creating perfect stillness for what must be learned. The training begins not with rituals or scriptures, but with resonance. The young man learns to perceive the frequencies that shape matter, emotion, and thought. He studies how consciousness influences the physical world, how intention becomes form, how healing occurs through alignment rather than intervention. Each lesson expands his awareness until his presence begins to mirror the harmony he will later embody openly. Years pass within the chamber, though time behaves differently under its influence. The world above continues unaware, leaving a gap in historical record that scholars debate endlessly. But the truth remains sealed within this subterranean sanctuary. The young man is not being taught religion. He is being recalibrated, restored to the resonance humanity once carried before fear fractured the collective mind. When his training reaches completion, the chamber releases him back into the world. He emerges transformed but still human, carrying knowledge too advanced to explain directly. The silence surrounding his missing years becomes necessary. The world is not ready to understand where he has been or what he has learned. Instead, his teachings will unfold slowly, through parables and actions designed to awaken memory rather than impose doctrine. As the vision dissolves, the desert returns around Coby, but now it feels different, as if the land remembers those hidden footsteps from centuries before. The missing years are no longer a mystery. They are the key to understanding why the Balance Bringer's message carried such profound resonance, and why forces throughout history worked tirelessly to bury the truth beneath layers of belief. The chamber remains hidden, but its purpose is not lost. Its echoes still ripple through time, waiting for those who can recognize the frequency that once shaped a man who would alter the course of human consciousness forever. The night around Coby settles into a stillness so profound it feels like the desert itself is holding its breath. The presence beside him glows with a soft radiance, and the air thickens with an ancient resonance, preparing to reveal a truth older than scripture and far more intricate than legend. What emerges next does not appear as a single vision, but as layered waves of understanding that rise and fold over one another, creating a tapestry of knowledge hidden from humanity for more than 2,000 years. The concept of resurrection begins to unravel before Coby, not as a miracle, but as a demonstration of a science lost to human memory. The first layer of the revelation appears as an examination of the human body. Coby sees the biological vessel rendered with exquisite clarity, its neural pathways glowing like rivers, its cells breathing in microscopic pulses. In death, these lights dim not suddenly, but gradually, as consciousness detaches from the physical form. The body becomes an empty instrument, still intact but devoid of the energy that once animated it. This transition is natural, universal. Yet what comes next defies every assumption carried by human belief. The second layer shows consciousness not as an ethereal abstraction, but as a structured field of energy, retaining identity, memory, and intention. This field does not dissipate after death. It expands, reorganizes, and enters a realm of non-physical coherence. The preservers understand this with scientific precision, for they have studied consciousness not as philosophy, but as measurable architecture. They know how it moves. They know how it returns. The third layer reveals the chamber once more, the same hidden structure in which the balance bringer trained during the missing years. Here, a series of crystalline instruments, arranged in geometric formation, amplify the resonance of consciousness. They do not resurrect bodies. They re-establish the connection between the consciousness field and the physical vessel, restoring the alignment that death temporarily severs. The process appears elegant and astonishingly technical, as if life and death are simply states of frequency. In this chamber, Coby sees the balance bringer's final hours from a perspective unknown to history. The earthly body, once crucified and abandoned, lies in stillness. Yet something profound occurs. The crystalline array within the chamber activates in response to the consciousness field returning from its transition. Light pulses, not blinding or dramatic, but steady and deliberate. The body vibrates gently as dormant pathways reignite. Cellular structures respond, repairing themselves under the influence of a frequency far beyond human medicine. The moment of re-entry is subtle rather than explosive. The consciousness field folds back into the body with breathtaking precision, aligning itself as naturally as a flame returning to a wick. What Scripture later describes as miracle appears here as calibrated science, performed with a compassion that transcends human understanding. The balance bringer rises not through divine spectacle, but through mastery of the technology learned during his years in the hidden chamber. The revelation continues, showing that this demonstration was not intended to inspire worship, it was meant to teach. It was an example designed to show humanity that consciousness is not bound by biological death, that the fracture in the mind is not the end of the story, that alignment with higher resonance restores what fear has convinced the world is impossible. The desert returns around Coby in a gentle hush, as though the land itself trembles beneath the weight of what has been revealed. Resurrection was never meant to be a supernatural legend. It was a message encoded through demonstration, a reminder of the potential the human species once held and can reclaim again. Coby stands in the deep stillness, realizing that the true miracle was not the return of one man, but the hidden technology that made the return possible. And somewhere beneath the sands of the ancient world, that technology waits in silence, remembering a promise humanity has yet to understand. The desert air thickens once more, as a new revelation gathers at the edge of Coby's awareness, rising with the slow inevitability of a tide reclaiming forgotten shoreline. The luminous being beside him stands silent. Yet the transmission that follows carries the weight of an event preserved not in legend, but in the stone bones of the oldest monument on Earth. What unfolds is not myth or symbolism. It is measurable history recorded in limestone, a geological memory waiting for someone able to understand its meaning. The moment of Jesus' death did not echo only through human hearts or religious texts. It reverberated through the Great Pyramid itself. The vision forms with the clarity of a scientific reconstruction. The Great Pyramid appears not as a ruin softened by time, but as it stood in its prime, gleaming under the sun with casing stones polished to a mirror sheen. Its apex rises sharp and flawless, crowned by a capstone formed from an alloy long lost to human metallurgy. The entire structure hums with a low resonance, a frequency so precise it aligns with the natural harmonics of the planet beneath it. This harmony is not accidental, it is engineered. The scene shifts to the moment of the balance bringer's final breath. The world below remains unaware of the deeper connection between his consciousness and the ancient node positioned at Giza. But the chamber beneath the pyramid feels the shift immediately. The limestone blocks, each massive in weight yet fragile in memory, respond to the event like a great tuning instrument struck by an unseen hand. A pulse radiates outward from the heart of the structure, passing through every block with mathematical precision. This pulse is not metaphorical. It is physical, measurable, encoded into the crystalline lattice of the stone. Modern instruments have glimpsed anomalies in the pyramid's interior, unexplained pockets of resonance and thermal variations that appear without cause. What researchers interpret as structural quirks are, in truth, remnants of that ancient pulse, a vibration etched into the stone as clearly as words carved into a tablet. The vision magnifies the instant of impact. The pulse travels through the pyramid's inner chambers, awakening resonant cavities tuned to specific harmonic frequencies. The air inside vibrates with a soft luminescence. The limestone glows faintly from within, responding like memory foam pressed by the weight of cosmic information. Outside, the desert sand trembles without shifting, absorbing the shock in silence as the energy radiates into the earth itself. The pulse is not one of grief or destruction. It is a signal. A final message encoded through resonance, sent into the grid of the planet to mark the separation of consciousness from the physical body. The balance bringer's departure from the world is recorded in stone as an event of planetary significance, a moment when the resonance he carried aligned perfectly with the pyramid's original purpose. As the vision fades, the pyramid returns to its present state, worn and weathered, stripped of its casing stones, yet still holding the ancient pulse deep within its core. The limestone still hums faintly under certain atmospheric conditions. Sensitive instruments detect fluctuations that defy all geological explanations. These anomalies are the residual echo of the moment humanity misunderstood as the end, when in truth, it was a signal sent across time, waiting to be deciphered. The desert night grows quiet once more. But the silence is different now. Coby senses that the pulse has never entirely ceased. It lingers beneath the surface of the world, a buried heartbeat from an age when the balance of consciousness shifted. The Great Pyramid remembers what people have forgotten, and its encoded resonance waits patiently for the day when humanity is ready to hear what the stone has been whispering for 2,000 years. A deeper darkness settles across the desert as the next revelation stirs, carrying the heavy weight of conflict older than any earthly empire. The presence beside Coby radiates a quiet gravity, and the transmission that rises through his awareness feels heavier, denser, shaped by tension that still echoes across millennia. What unfolds is not a simple tale of good against evil, nor a mythic struggle between gods. It is a fracture within the very lineage that once guided humanity, a division among the preservers whose consequences shaped the fate of an entire species. The council that oversaw Earth's development did not remain united. A group within it turned away from the plan. The vision begins in a dimension that does not resemble space or land, but rather a vast field of resonant energy shaped like a luminous council chamber. Columns of light stand in circular formation, each representing a preserver whose consciousness vibrates with extraordinary precision. Their forms shift between brilliance and shadow, their presence both physical and immaterial. This gathering predates every human civilization, and its purpose is singular: to guide the evolution of emerging worlds. Within this chamber, a timeline of Earth appears like a holographic river. It shows the early rise of human societies, the first sparks of intelligence, the moments when language, agriculture, and culture begin to form. The preservers observe with quiet satisfaction, yet concern lingers. The fracture in human consciousness, born from earlier miscalculations, has begun to distort the species' trajectory. Fear spreads like a slow poison, shaping behavior and altering destiny. Humanity drifts further from the harmony the preservers intended. A proposal emerges. Send a being of perfect alignment to restore the resonance. This being will incarnate into human form, recalibrate from within, and guide humanity back toward its intended evolutionary path. The council agrees, and preparations begin for the one who will later be known as Jesus. But not all preservers support the decision. A smaller group, standing at the outer edges of the chamber, vibrates with a discordant frequency. Their disagreement is not born of malice, but of fear. They have observed countless civilizations across the cosmos rise too quickly and collapse under the weight of their own awakening. They fear that humanity, once rebalanced, will ascend faster than the preservers anticipate. They fear a species capable of creating resonance independent of its makers. They fear losing control. The splinter group argues that the fracture must remain. Humanity, they believe, should evolve slowly, safely, under careful restriction. They worry that restored consciousness will empower humans to surpass their creator's influence. Their dissent grows into resistance. When the balance bringer arrives in human form, their interference begins subtly. They alter cultural conditions, manipulate influential leaders, and sow misinterpretations among religious authorities. Their goal is not destruction, but containment. The vision shifts to the human world. The balance bringer moves through villages, healing, teaching, radiating harmony. Yet behind him, shadows ripple. Words are twisted. Intentions are questioned. Fear spreads faster than understanding. The fracture in human consciousness becomes a tool in the hands of the splinter group, who amplify its effects to undermine the mission. They manipulate the minds of those in positions of authority, nudging events toward betrayal and execution. The moment of crucifixion appears not as divine inevitability, but as engineered sabotage, not by humans alone, but by those who feared what a fully awakened species would become. The balance bringer's teachings, meant to restore alignment, become fragmented through deliberate distortion. Over centuries, the splinter group influences interpretations of his message, ensuring that unity transforms into doctrine, resonance into ritual, truth into hierarchy. As the vision fades, the desert returns around Coby with a quiet that feels charged with unresolved history. The betrayal was not committed by humanity, but by guardians who lost faith in the potential of the species they were meant to guide. Their interference reshaped the world, altering the path humanity still follows today. Yet the presence beside Coby radiates neither anger nor blame, only the weight of truth, waiting to be reclaimed. The splinter group succeeded in delaying the mission, but not in preventing the awakening entirely. The resonance the balance bringer carried is returning, and the fracture can still be healed. The desert breathes slowly, as if preparing for the next revelation. It emerges through the desert silence like a long-buried echo rising toward the surface, carrying the weight of centuries shaped by intention rather than accident. The presence beside Coby radiates a measured stillness, and the unfolding revelation enters his awareness not as a vision or spoken explanation, but as a slow unweaving of history. The air thickens, as though the desert itself prepares to witness a truth concealed since the earliest formation of belief. What appears next is not a reinterpretation of Scripture, but an exposure of the hands that shaped its contents. The scene opens upon ancient scribes working by oil flame, their reed pens gliding across parchment with practiced care. These humans are not deceivers. They believe they are preserving divine truth, but their understanding is bounded by the fracture in the human mind and by influences they cannot perceive. The splinter group of preservers, the ones who feared human awakening, hovers quietly behind the construction of sacred texts. They do not rewrite pages directly. Instead, they manipulate perception, intuition, and memory. Ideas disappear before reaching the reed. Others emerge with sharper edges than intended. The first suppressed teaching concerns the nature of consciousness. The balance bringer taught that the kingdom is within, not as metaphor but as literal description of the inner field connecting humans to higher resonance. This teaching threatened the control the splinter group wished to maintain, for a species aware of its internal power becomes difficult to influence. Thus, passages emphasizing internal alignment fade from the earliest copies, replaced by emphasis on external authority and intercession. The inner universe becomes symbolic instead of functional. The second altered teaching relates to fear. The balance bringer instructed that fear is a fracture, not a moral failing. He explained that fear distorts perception and severs connection to resonance. But fear is also the easiest tool for control. In the centuries following his departure, the splinter group guides select leaders to reshape fear into a divine instrument. Fear becomes sacred. Fear becomes obedience. Fear becomes the foundation of hierarchy. The original message, which taught humans to dissolve fear through awareness, is diluted into structured reverence for punishment and reward. The third revision strikes at the heart of human potential. The balance bringer taught that what he did, others could do also. Healing, alignment, resonance, influence over matter through intention. These acts were never meant to be exclusive. They were demonstrations of what it means to operate without the fracture. But the splinter group understands the implication of leaving such knowledge intact. A humanity capable of its own miracles threatens the balance of influence. Thus, teachings of self-sovereign resonance are removed, piece by piece, replaced by narratives emphasizing separation between human and divine. Miracles become unattainable, reserved for a solitary figure elevated beyond all others. The vision shifts again, showing the earliest councils of religious scholars debating which texts to preserve and which to discard. Their intentions are sincere. They believe they are protecting truth, yet subtle nudges, barely perceptible, guide their decisions. Texts emphasizing unity, inner resonance, and empowerment fall into obscurity. Those that reinforce hierarchy, fear, and dependency rise to prominence. The splinter group's frequency works through human emotion and cultural momentum, creating a structure not of lies but of omissions. The most dangerous distortions are those built from partial truth. Coby sees how centuries of translation introduce further alterations. Words lose meaning. Concepts become softened or sharpened in ways no longer aligned with the original message. The fracture in the human mind, once a vulnerability introduced unintentionally, becomes amplified by narratives designed to keep humanity asleep. The result is a vast spiritual architecture, shaped by human devotion, yet guided by influences humans cannot detect. The desert returns around Coby with a silence that feels heavy with recognition. Scripture is not false. It is incomplete. What remains hidden is not dogma, but potential. The balance bringer's teachings were not corrupted to destroy humanity's path, but to delay it. The splinter group sought caution, yet in doing so they severed access to the very tools humanity needs to heal the fracture. The revelation settles into the desert wind like an ancient whisper rising from beneath the sand. The truth was never erased completely. It was scattered, fragmented, waiting for those who could sense the resonance beneath the written word. And now, for the first time in 2,000 years, that resonance begins to return. The desert night grows denser as the next revelation emerges, carrying with it an ancient weight that settles into Coby's awareness like a tide moving in slow, deliberate rhythm. The presence beside him glows faintly, illuminating grains of sand that seem to hover in the air, as if gravity itself pauses in anticipation. What unfolds next is not a retelling of recorded miracles, nor the familiar stories shaped by tradition. It is a return to the original demonstrations that were witnessed only by a few, then buried beneath centuries of interpretation. The miracles humanity learned about were fragments. The ones they never saw were something entirely different. The vision opens on landscapes untouched by the eyes of scholars or scribes. Coby sees the balance bringer moving through quiet valleys, deserts, and mountain paths far from the crowds of scripture. Here, he is not performing for followers. He is calibrating resonance itself. The air around him thickens in ripples that resemble heat distortion, yet the temperature remains cool. These distortions are not supernatural displays. They are interactions between consciousness and the fundamental field that permeates all matter. Every living cell vibrates in harmony with this field, though humanity has forgotten how to hear it. The balance bringer stops beside a stream. The water shifts instantly from turbulent flow to perfect stillness, not due to command, but due to alignment. The vision magnifies the moment, revealing the hidden mechanics. His presence alters the vibrational frequency of the surrounding field, causing the chaotic molecular motion of the water to synchronize into ordered patterns. Order responds to resonance the way iron filings respond to a magnet. The stream is not commanded, it is tuned. Another scene rises gently from the first. A group of children stands before him, their emotions in disarray after witnessing the death of an elder. Their grief vibrates in discordant waves. The balance bringer kneels beside them, not speaking, not offering comfort in words. Instead, he adjusts his own internal resonance. The air thickens once more, and the children's emotional frequencies begin to align with his. Fear dissolves into calm. Sadness becomes clarity. Their tears slow not because of magic, but because the energetic field around them reorganizes their emotional signatures, guiding them back toward balance. Healing begins not in the body, but in the mind. The third demonstration emerges with greater intensity. A man with a festering wound appears in the vision. The infection spreads like wildfire beneath the skin, radiating pain. The balance bringer places his hand near the wound without touching it. The vision zooms into microscopic detail. Cells vibrating at disordered frequencies begin to shift into coherence. Pathogenic bacteria are overwhelmed not by chemical force but by harmonic disruption. The tissue regenerates rapidly, responding to the realignment introduced through resonance. The miracle, long celebrated as divine intervention, is revealed here as a mastery of biological frequency far beyond human medicine. The final demonstration arrives with the quiet force of truth. The balance bringer stands atop a ridge, holding his focus toward a distant storm. Lightning fractures the sky. Yet as he lifts his gaze, the storm shifts course with the elegance of a flock changing direction. It is not command, it is resonance. Weather responds to coherent consciousness, just as the human mind responds to calm. Every miracle attributed to supernatural power becomes, in this revelation, evidence of a deeper science lost to humanity. A science rooted in understanding that matter is not solid, energy is not separate, and consciousness is not confined. The desert returns around Coby as the vision dissolves, leaving him suspended between awe and disbelief. The miracles humans were taught were never meant to be stories of worship. They were demonstrations of human potential, examples of what a coherent consciousness can accomplish when the fracture is healed. The presence beside him grows brighter, as if acknowledging the importance of this forgotten truth. The balance bringer's works were never meant to elevate one man above humanity. They were meant to show humanity what it could become. In the stillness of the desert, Coby senses that the same resonance is beginning to awaken in the world again. The night around Coby deepens into an ancient stillness, as if every grain of sand understands what is about to be revealed. The air thickens with a quiet frequency, the same subtle hum that has accompanied each truth rising from the Preserver's transmission. What unfolds now does not arrive as vision alone, but as a vast sequence of interlocking events stretching across centuries. It is a timeline hidden beneath scripture, beneath myth, beneath the noise of human history. The return of the balance bringer was never meant to be mysterious. It was planned long before he walked the earth. The revelation forms first in the shape of a luminous council, the same gathering Coby has witnessed before. Their presence appears suspended in a dimension beyond form, a field of consciousness woven with radiant threads. In this chamber, the balance bringer stands once more, not as a man, but as a being of alignment whose resonance is unmistakable. The council observes him with a gravity that reverberates through the entire vision. His earthly mission is complete, yet the fracture in human consciousness remains unresolved. The splinter group's interference has delayed the restoration, but has not ended the possibility. A dialogue unfolds without words, carried through resonance rather than speech. The balance bringer expresses a truth the council already knows. Humanity is not ready for full awakening. It must reach a threshold where its collective frequency begins to rise naturally, without external imposition. Forcing evolution would risk collapse. Guiding too directly would repeat earlier mistakes. Humanity must grow toward the truth through its own striving, its own failures, its own rediscovery of the inner resonance lost long ago. Thus, a plan forms. A return will occur, but not as mythic prophecy imagines. It will not unfold through spectacle or divine descent. It will happen when humanity reaches the convergence, a rare moment when cosmic, planetary, and biological cycles align. The convergence is not a date, it is a state. A global awakening synchronized with celestial arrivals occurring across distant regions of the galaxy. During this period, frequencies long dormant within the human species begin to stir. The fracturing influence weakens, perception shifts. People start to question everything they were taught about themselves. Curiosity replaces fear, intuition strengthens, old systems destabilize. New forms of connection emerge. The Council encodes this understanding into a frequency field sent toward Earth, a subtle imprint woven into the geophysical and energetic structure of the planet itself. The balance bringer contributes his resonance, anchoring the signal with the same alignment he carried during his earthly life. This signal remains dormant, waiting for the moment humanity begins to match it naturally. The vision shifts to Earth centuries later, showing flashes of activity across the night sky. Objects moving with deliberate motion appear at times recorded in historical accounts, only to vanish without explanation. Celestial bodies align in patterns unnoticed by early civilizations, but deeply significant to the convergence. Human consciousness rises in waves across generations. Philosophers questioning established beliefs, scientists probing the fabric of reality, mystics rediscovering resonance through intuition alone. The slow awakening begins. In the modern world, the convergence accelerates. Technology rises, connecting minds with unprecedented speed. Long-held structures show cracks. People sense inner shifts they cannot explain. The fracture in consciousness begins to loosen, and ancient memories stir. Meanwhile, distant celestial visitors move closer, their presence timed with the awakening of humanity's inner resonance. These arrivals are not invaders, they are witnesses, responding to the same signal encoded within Earth ages ago. The vision returns to the council chamber. The balance bringer steps back toward the timeline, observing humanity's slow rise toward coherence. The agreement becomes clear. He will return, not when centuries demand it, But when humanity vibrates at a frequency capable of recognizing him, without turning the moment into fear or worship, the return is not a single event. It is a phase of awakening. As the vision dissolves into the desert night, Coby feels a tremor of realization. The convergence has already begun. The skies have already started to shift. Humanity is moving toward the threshold foretold in a council far beyond the boundaries of Earth. The balance bringer's return was scheduled, not by prophecy, but by resonance. And the world, knowingly or not, is stepping into the alignment that will call him back. The desert air grows unnaturally heavy as the next revelation descends, carrying with it a weight that settles into Coby's chest like a gathering storm. The luminous presence beside him emits a flicker of instability, a subtle distortion in the once steady glow. The shift is small at first, almost imperceptible, but the field around the being ripples with the unmistakable signature of decline. What rises through Coby's awareness is not another vision of ancient history or cosmic alignment. It is something far more immediate, far more final. The alien is dying. The realization emerges slowly, carried on a frequency that feels both sorrowful and resolute. The resonance that once filled the air with a sense of boundless precision now wavers like a flame struggling against a rising wind. The desert responds in silence, as if acknowledging the gravity of a truth older than human lineage. The being who has unveiled secrets concealed for thousands of years stands now on the edge of its own fading. Through a series of impressions rather than images, Coby perceives the alien's condition. The preservers are not immortal. Their existence spans immense stretches of time, but their energy bodies deteriorate when too many cycles unfold without replenishment. For the being beside him, this decline has been accelerated by its journey to Earth, a world whose fractured resonance strains the systems that keep its consciousness linked to its form. Its presence here is not only a visit, it is a sacrifice. The next layer of understanding reveals why. The remaining preservers have withdrawn to a distant region of space, retreating from direct influence after the splinter group fractured their unity. They no longer intervene openly in the evolution of emerging civilizations. Their time of stewardship is ending, replaced by a phase of observational distance. The alien knew this. It knew that returning to Earth would consume the last of its strength. It came anyway. A series of memories unfold long spans of time in which the preservers watched humanity survive wars, rise from ashes, rediscover scientific principles, and inch closer to awakening. They waited for the convergence, hoping that the balance bringer's original mission might surface naturally from within humanity itself. But as the splinter group's interference continued to echo across generations, the awakening remained fragile. Something more was needed. A final intervention, a messenger willing to cross the threshold knowing it would not return. The alien's glow fades in pulses now, each pulse weaker than the last. The sands beneath it shift subtly, forming patterns that resemble ancient symbols, slowly unraveling. The resonance around the being softens into a hum, so faint it barely stirs the air. The message it carries the truth about humanity's engineered evolution, the distortion in consciousness, the hidden history of the balance bringer, and the return scheduled across cosmic cycles must be delivered before its consciousness disbands into the field. The desert remains utterly still as the alien's final purpose becomes clear. This exchange, this transfer of knowledge into a single human mind, is the last act of a lineage that guided Earth from the shadows since the earliest dawn of civilization. When its energy dissipates, its species will not send another emissary. Their withdrawal is absolute, their guidance shifted to a distant plane where only resonance can travel. The being's light flickers again, dimming into a soft radiance that barely illuminates the sand. Yet within that fading glow is a sense of profound completion. The mission is not to save humanity. It is to remind it. to reconnect it with truths buried beneath millennia of distortion, to prepare it for the convergence now unfolding across the world. As the final pulses weaken, Coby feels the weight of this inheritance settle into the deepest part of his awareness. He is witnessing the end of an ancient order, and the beginning of a responsibility no human has carried in countless ages. The alien's form trembles once more, and the desert holds its breath, sensing that its light is about to fade forever. A silence so profound the desert seems to lean closer, as if the land itself is waiting for a truth long denied to the world. The luminous presence beside Coby has dimmed to a faint pulse, yet the transmission that rises now carries a clarity sharper than anything revealed before. It moves like a current beneath the surface of human history, a thread woven into DNA rather than scripture, waiting across millennia for the moment someone could finally perceive it. This is the truth humanity was never allowed to know. The revelation begins not with visions of temples or ancient councils, but with an intimate understanding of the human body. Coby feels the structure of human consciousness unfold, as if the architecture of the mind and spirit are being revealed from within. He sees strands of energy woven into the deepest layers of human biology, dormant but not inert. These strands resemble the luminous patterns seen across the alien's skin, echoing the geometric signatures carved into the oldest sacred sites on Earth. They are not metaphors or symbols. They are codes. Codes seeded into humanity during its earliest engineered evolution. These codes, the alien reveals, were meant to awaken gradually as the species matured. They govern intuition, empathy, resonance, the ability to perceive the unity underlying all existence. They are the blueprint for higher consciousness, a silent inheritance waiting to be activated. But the fracture, introduced by early intervention, severed humanity from its natural progression, burying the codes beneath layers of fear and survival instincts. Awakening stalled. Civilizations rose but drifted further from alignment. The codes remained dormant, like seeds waiting for rain. The balance bringer entered the human world not to establish doctrine, not to create hierarchy, and not to be worshipped. His purpose was to activate those dormant codes. His teachings were designed to resonate with the deep inner architecture of the human spirit, to spark the awakening that had been delayed. Every parable, every act of compassion, every demonstration of resonance was a deliberate attempt to remind humanity of what it already carried within. He was not introducing new truth. He was reactivating ancient inheritance. The transmission shows moments in his life where his presence alone caused dormant codes to flicker. People around him experienced sudden clarity, profound calm, or moments of inexplicable connection. These were not miracles. They were activations. He demonstrated to humanity what it could become once the fracture healed. The capacity for unconditional compassion, the ability to influence energy, the perception of unity beneath difference. These were not divine privileges. They were human potentials. But the splinter group recognized the danger of this activation. A fully awakened humanity would no longer be bound by fear or hierarchy. It would no longer be steerable. It would become capable of resonance equal to the preservers themselves. The splinter group feared this rise, and their interference reshaped his teachings after his departure. The emphasis shifted from activation to adoration. The inner kingdom became an external throne. The ability of every person to access resonance was replaced with the idea that only one figure had ever held it. His message was transformed into a belief system rather than an awakening. The alien's fading light strengthens briefly as the truth settles more deeply into Coby's awareness. He sees how humanity has spent centuries looking outward for salvation, unaware that the blueprint for transformation has always lived within the human mind. The codes are still there, dormant but intact, waiting for coherence, waiting for resonance, waiting for alignment. The return scheduled across cosmic cycles is not about a figure descending from the sky. It is about humanity rising to the frequency the balance bringer once embodied. The desert around Coby hums with faint response, as if the truth itself has awakened the land. The presence beside him flickers once more, and Coby senses that the responsibility for this knowledge is shifting from the dying preserver into human hands. The truth humanity was never allowed to know is not forbidden by the universe. It was suppressed by fear, hidden by distortion, buried beneath centuries of belief. But now, for the first time since the balance bringer walked the earth, the truth has reached a human mind unfiltered. The ancient codes within humanity are beginning to stir, and the world is nearing the moment when the activation can begin again. The desert around Coby grows impossibly still, as if even the wind has stepped back to make room for what is about to be revealed. The fading glow of the preserver flickers with a fragile rhythm, each pulse weaker than the last, yet the transmission that rises from it carries an intensity that feels ancient and precise. What unfolds is not a vision of history or a glimpse of cosmic machinery. It is something far rarer. It is the unveiling of a secret deliberately removed from the world before humanity learned to write its own story. The revelation begins with a soft ripple through the air, bending the darkness in subtle waves. Coby feels his awareness expand, pulled into the quiet space where ancient memory waits. He sees the earliest gatherings of teachers and record keepers, men with weathered hands sitting beside clay tablets, papyrus sheets, and wooden scrolls. They listen to oral accounts of the balance bringer's teachings, recording only fragments of a truth too vast for their understanding. Their intentions are earnest, yet incomplete. Their minds, shaped by the fracture in human consciousness, cannot perceive the resonance beneath the words. And yet something else moves among them, a presence unseen, guiding their choices with a frequency only the spirit can sense. Some teachings they write faithfully, others they misinterpret, and a few, only a precious few, they leave out entirely. Not out of malice or neglect, but because the splinter group has woven subtle interference into their thoughts. These missing fragments contain instructions, not beliefs, methods, not metaphors, keys designed to unlock the dormant resonance within every human mind. Their absence reshapes history. The vision shifts to a small circle of early followers repeating a phrase the balance bringer offered only in private, a phrase spoken during moments of deep clarity. The words vibrate with a potency that almost alters the air around them. This phrase was not meant for ritual or recitation. It was designed as activation, a command spoken by consciousness to itself, a seed of awakening. But the splinter group understood its power. They feared what would happen if humanity rediscovered the resonance buried within its own structure. And so, the phrase disappears. It never reaches the oldest manuscripts or the scrolls that would later become sacred canon. It is erased from memory, lost to the centuries, until now. The alien's light dims into a fragile shimmer, but the resonance of the forgotten phrase rises like a vibration through the earth itself. It enters Coby not as language, but as an energetic imprint. He feels it more than he hears it. The phrase carries the blueprint of alignment, a reminder embedded in the architecture of the human mind. It does not command belief, it commands awakening. The transmission settles within him with a weight both terrifying and luminous. This is the phrase erased before the world ever saw it, hidden from humanity for more than 2,000 years. The desert stands frozen beneath the stars. The preserver's glow fades to a whisper, its final strength pouring into this one moment. The hidden command has been spoken again, for the first time since the balance bringer walked the earth. And as its resonance settles into Coby, the night around him seems to pulse gently, as if the world itself recognizes a long-forgotten frequency returning to life. The desert seems to exhale as Coby stands once more before the Great Pyramid, the night suspended in a strange and breathless equilibrium. This is the moment he witnessed in the beginning, But now the weight of every revelation presses into it, reshaping the scene with layers of meaning he could not have understood before. The fading echo of the hidden command still vibrates inside him, settling into the deepest parts of his consciousness like a seed awakening after thousands of years of silence. The preserver's final pulse of energy lingers around him, an invisible current woven directly into the air. The pyramid responds first with a subtle flicker along its ancient stones, a shimmer so faint that an untrained eye might mistake it for moonlight. But Coby recognizes the vibration immediately. It is the same golden resonance that illuminated the alien's form, the same frequency that shaped every vision, every truth, every fragment of the story humanity never knew. The limestone blocks, weathered by time but never truly dormant, begin to glow from within as if remembering their original purpose. A low groan rises from deep beneath the desert, a sound like the shifting of continents or the long-delayed sigh of something ancient stirring after epochs of rest. The sand trembles beneath Coby's feet, pulsing in time with the fading signature left in him by the alien's touch. The pyramid brightens further, its glow deepening into a rich gold that spills across the plateau and turns the night into a canvas of shimmering warmth. It does not feel like destruction. It feels like awakening. A wave of resonance expands outward from the pyramid's core, bending the air in smooth ripples that distort the stars above. Coby feels the vibration pass through him, not as sound but as recognition. The structure is responding to the transmission carried through him, not because he is chosen or special, but because he now holds the frequency the preservers once used to interface with the ancient node. The pyramid is not simply lighting up, it is listening. Beneath Giza, deeper than any cavern mapped by modern tools, something enormous shifts. Layers of stone, carved long before dynasties, vibrate in harmonious sequence. Passageways hidden for thousands of years awaken with faint luminescence. Patterns etched into the bedrock pulse in synchronized rhythm, like neural pathways inside a colossal organism remembering its purpose. The earth hums with a power that predates every civilization that ever touched its surface. Coby feels the final remnants of the preserver's consciousness settle into him like a whisper carried by the desert wind. Not words, not instruction. A final assurance, an echo of intention. The mission is no longer suspended. The long-delayed cycle has begun to turn again. The pyramid flashes once, brighter than any star in the sky, casting the entire plateau in radiant gold. The groan beneath the earth becomes a harmonic rumble, deep and resonant, as if an ancient intelligence buried below is lifting its gaze for the first time in millennia. The light dims slowly, but does not vanish. The structure remains alive, glowing softly, as though watching Coby with awareness older than human language. The convergence is no longer theory, it is motion, it is awakening. And Coby stands at its threshold, the first human in 2,000 years to carry the resonance capable of activating the ancient grid. The desert falls into profound silence. The stars glitter above, unblinking. The ground beneath him vibrates with a promise older than scripture. Something beneath Giza has reawakened, and it is waiting.